The sleek, matte black shuttle descended through the atmosphere of Veridor Prime, its engines whispering against the alien wind. Inside, Commander Ryland Cole tightened the straps of his harness, the faint hum of the ship's systems a comforting backdrop. He wasn't nervous. Ryland had faced worse than this, far worse, on Earth's untamed frontiers. Yet, there was a weight to the moment. Humanity's first step into the intergalactic arena demanded not just courage, but a performance that could alter its place among the stars. The alien world emerged through the viewport, an iridescent canvas of shifting blues and greens, with spires of crystalline vegetation jutting into a saffron sky. The pilot, an automaton with a humanoid frame, announced their arrival in an emotionless tone. Ryland unbuckled and rose, his boots clicking against the polished floor. He glanced at his reflection in the viewport. A rugged face, scarred but steady, framed by close-cropped black hair. His uniform, a simple yet sturdy affair, bore the insignia of Earth's fledgling interstellar alliance. No pomp, just purpose. The shuttle docked seamlessly, the hatch hissing open to reveal a delegation of Veridor's council members. They were a motley assembly, each one a testament to the diversity of life beyond Earth. At the forefront stood Azirael, an elder of the Corvalins, whose translucent skin pulsed with a faint blue glow. His tendrils swayed gently as he stepped forward, his voice resonating like a soft chime. "Commander Ryland Cole, we welcome you to Veridor Prime. You honor us with your presence." Ryland inclined his head slightly, his gaze taking in the others. There was Thuruk of the Yernakta, a willowy figure whose enormous black eyes seemed to absorb the light, and Krenzal, a hulking yet fragile-looking being encased in an exoskeletal armor. Ryland noted their postures. Wary but curious, their expressions, if they could be called that, a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. "The honor is mine," Ryland replied, his voice steady. He stepped onto the platform, the gravity slightly lighter than Earth's. It felt strange but not uncomfortable. "I hope this marks the beginning of a prosperous relationship between Earth and the Galactic Council." Azirael's tendrils fluttered, a sign Ryland interpreted as approval. "We hope so, too. Come, the Council awaits. There is much to discuss." The group moved through a series of interconnected corridors, the walls lined with what looked like flowing liquid light. Ryland couldn't help but marvel at the alien architecture, but he kept his observations internal. He knew why he was here. To represent a species the Council viewed as a paradox. Humans were the survivors of a death world, a planet teeming with dangers that would render most sentient species extinct. To the Council, Earth's invitation was both a gesture of inclusion and a test of tolerance. As they entered the Council chamber, a vast dome supported by pillars of shimmering energy, Ryland felt the shift in atmosphere. The air was cooler, charged with an almost imperceptible hum. Delegates from countless species filled the room, their forms an explosion of diversity. Ryland caught glimpses of creatures with feathered appendages, others with chitinous shells, and even a being whose form seemed to ripple like water held upright. All turned to him as he entered, their focus like a physical weight. Azirael guided him to the center, where a raised platform awaited. "Please, Commander, stand here. The Council wishes to hear from you directly." Ryland nodded and ascended the platform. He stood tall, his shoulders squared. He spoke, his voice carrying through the chamber without need for amplification. "Representatives of the Galactic Council, I stand before you as a representative of Earth, a world that has endured and thrived against challenges many would consider insurmountable. Our history is one of survival, innovation, and determination. We come not as conquerors or beggars, but as equals seeking partnership." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Some nodded, their gestures indicating agreement. Others remained still, their alien expressions unreadable. Azirael stepped forward. "Your words carry weight, Commander, but actions, as you humans say, speak louder. Perhaps this meeting will provide an opportunity for us to see the truth of your nature." Before Ryland could respond, a shrill alarm pierced the air. Lights in the chamber shifted to a deep crimson, and a voice, mechanical and panicked, echoed through the space. Emergency breach detected. Perimeter compromised. The council erupted into chaos. Delegates scrambled for exits, their movements frantic. Ryland's instincts kicked in. He turned to Azyral. "What's happening?" The Corvalin elder's glow dimmed, a sign of distress. "A Shardfang beast. It's impossible. They never come this close to the city. Guess today's the exception," Ryland muttered. He scanned the chamber, assessing the exits and potential bottlenecks. The Shardfang beast, whatever it was, had created panic that could lead to more casualties than the creature itself. "Everyone calm down." Ryland's voice cut through the din. Heads turned, and for a moment there was silence. He addressed Azyral. "How do we contain it?" Azyral hesitated. "Containment is not feasible. We must evacuate." Ryland shook his head. "Evacuation's a luxury we don't have if that thing gets in here. Show me the breach." "Commander, you don't understand," Thurrock interjected, his voice trembling. "The Shardfang is not a creature you fight. It's death incarnate." Ryland met the alien's gaze, his expression unflinching. "I've seen death. Take me to the breach." Azyral hesitated, but finally gestured to a monitor. A live feed displayed the creature, a monstrous form with crystalline scales that refracted light into dazzling, deadly beams. Its claws carved through walls like butter, and its movements were unervingly precise. "Stay here and keep the delegates safe," Ryland said. "I'll handle this." Before anyone could protest, he was already moving. The corridors blurred around him as he sprinted toward the breach, his mind calculating probabilities and strategies. He had no weapons, but he had something more valuable: the instincts of a Deathworlder. Earth had forged him in fire, and today that fire would burn bright. The Shardfang's roars echoed closer. Ryland's pace quickened, each step driving him toward the unknown. The corridor leading to the breach was dimly lit, the emergency lighting casting a stuttering red glow across the walls. Commander Ryland Cole moved with purpose, his senses heightened by the unmistakable signs of danger. The roars of the Shardfang beast reverberated through the structure, a deep, guttural sound that carried both menace and raw power. Ryland's steps echoed against the floor, steady despite the growing tension in the air. Every instinct he'd honed on Earth's brutal frontiers told him that this was a predator unlike any he'd faced before. And yet his resolve held firm. Rounding a corner, Ryland found himself at the edge of the breach. The wall had been obliterated, shards of crystalline material scattered across the ground, gleaming like frozen starlight. Beyond the rupture, a swirling storm of alien flora and jagged terrain painted a chaotic picture. And in the center of it all stood the Shardfang beast. It was a monstrous creature, its crystalline scales catching the faint light and refracting it into dazzling beams. The predator's 6 legs dug into the ground with razor-sharp talons, and its elongated head tilted in his direction, glowing eyes narrowing as it assessed the newcomer. Ryland crouched instinctively, his mind racing. The creature was built for killing, every part of its anatomy a weapon. Its jagged exoskeleton appeared impervious to standard attacks, and the acid-like drool sizzling against the ground suggested close combat was a death sentence. The beast let out another roar, this one directed at Ryland, as if to test his resolve. He didn't flinch. The aliens watching through the chamber's monitor had gone silent, their shock palpable even from a distance. "Commander Cole, return immediately," Azyral's voice crackled through the communicator. "That creature is beyond even your capabilities." "Not an option," Ryland replied, his voice calm. "If this thing gets past me, there won't be a chamber left to protect." He scanned the environment, searching for anything he could use. The remnants of the wall offered no advantage, and his uniform was hardly designed for this kind of engagement. Then his eyes fell on a damaged conduit sparking nearby. Electricity. It was a risk, but it was something. The Shardfang advanced, its movements deliberate, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Ryland took a deep breath, centering himself. "You want me?" he muttered. "Come and get me." With a burst of speed, the beast lunged, its massive form hurtling toward him with deadly precision. Ryland dove to the side, rolling as the creature's talons sliced through the air where he'd stood a moment earlier. The ground cracked beneath its weight, sending shards flying. Ryland came up in a crouch, his hands scrambling to grab one of the larger fragments. He hurled it at the Shardfang's head. It shattered harmlessly against the crystalline armor, but it bought him a second to move. He sprinted toward the damaged conduit, the sparking energy a beacon of desperate hope. The Shardfang roared in frustration, its movements accelerating as it pursued him. Ryland reached the conduit and ripped a length of exposed wiring free, the raw power buzzing against his gloved hands. He turned just as the beast closed the distance, its massive jaws snapping inches from his face. With a primal yell, he swung the live wire at the creature, striking one of its front legs. The reaction was immediate. Electricity coursed through the Shardfang's body, causing it to recoil with a deafening screech. The crystalline scales flickered, their reflective sheen momentarily dimmed. Ryland pressed the advantage, lashing out with the wire again and again, aiming for the joints where the armor was weakest. Each strike elicited another screech, the beast's movements becoming more erratic. But it wasn't enough. The Shardfang adapted quickly, its glowing eyes locking onto the conduit in Ryland's hands. With a swipe of its massive tail, it shattered the source of electricity, leaving Ryland weaponless. The beast's roar now carried a note of triumph as it stalked toward him, its steps deliberate and menacing. Ryland backed away, his mind racing for another solution. The corridor offered no other immediate resources, and the creature showed no signs of tiring. "Come on, think," Ryland muttered under his breath. His eyes darted to the shattered remains of the wall. The crystalline fragments littering the ground might be useless as weapons, but their reflective properties gave him an idea. He grabbed a large shard and angled it toward the ceiling, catching the faint emergency lighting. The light refracted, casting a dazzling array of beams across the corridor. The Shardfang paused, its head jerking toward the sudden display. "That's it," Ryland said, grabbing more fragments and arranging them to amplify the effect. The corridor filled with a chaotic dance of light, disorienting the beast. It thrashed in frustration, its movements clumsy as it tried to shield its eyes from the overwhelming glare. Ryland seized the moment. He sprinted toward the creature's side, aiming for the exposed joints he'd targeted earlier. With all his strength, he drove a jagged fragment into the soft tissue, eliciting a howl of pain. The beast reared back, its balance momentarily lost. Ryland didn't wait for it to recover. He grabbed another shard and repeated the attack, each strike aimed with surgical precision. The Shardfang's movements grew sluggish, its roars fading into pained growls. Finally, with a last, desperate lunge, Ryland drove the shard deep into the base of the creature's neck. The beast shuddered, its glowing eyes dimming as it collapsed to the ground with a resounding crash. Ryland stood over the fallen predator, his chest heaving as adrenaline coursed through him. Blood, some his own, some the beast's, dripped onto the floor. He wiped his face with a trembling hand, his mind still processing the battle. The corridor was silent now, the only sound the faint crackle of damaged systems. "Commander Cole, report." Izairo's voice came through the communicator, tentative and tinged with disbelief. Ryland took a moment to catch his breath before replying. "Shardfangs down. You're clear." A stunned silence followed before Izairo spoke again. "Incredible. Commander, you truly are a Deathworlder." Ryland allowed himself a grim smile. "Yeah, well, sometimes it's good to be the crazy one." He turned back toward the chamber, his steps heavy but resolute. The fight was over, but the night was far from done. The chamber was eerily silent when Ryland re-entered, his boots scuffing against the polished floor as he moved toward the council's assembly. The once vibrant display of alien diversity now seemed muted. The delegates' collective gaze locked on him. Ryland was a vision of humanity's resilience. His uniform torn, streaked with blood and soot, his movements deliberate despite the evident toll the battle had taken. He stood before them not just as a representative, but as a survivor, and the weight of what had transpired clung to him like a second skin. Izairal was the first to break the silence. The Corvellan elder stepped forward, his translucent form pulsing faintly with hues that Rylan had come to associate with reverence. "Commander Cole," he began, his voice steady but edged with an unfamiliar warmth, "you have done what many of us would have deemed impossible. The Shardfang beast, a creature of unmatched ferocity, has been felled by your hand." Words seem inadequate for such a feat. Rylan offered a small nod, his expression unreadable. "It wasn't just me," he replied. "I've learned to work with what's around me. Adaptation. It's what Earth's taught us, what it's made us." The room's atmosphere shifted, the tension giving way to curiosity and a cautious admiration. Delegates whispered among themselves, their voices carrying fragments of alien languages, the meanings of which Rylan could only guess. He stood still, letting their scrutiny wash over him. This moment wasn't about basking in victory. It was about ensuring Earth's place in this intricate web of interstellar politics. "Your actions speak volumes about your people," Thurok of the Yurnakta said, his massive black eyes fixed on Rylan. "Yet they also raise questions. How can a species born from such a perilous world offer anything but chaos to the galactic order?" Rylan met Thurok's gaze without flinching. "Surviving chaos doesn't mean we bring it with us," he said, his tone firm but measured. "Earth's history is one of finding order in disorder, of building from ruins. We don't seek to impose ourselves. We seek to learn, to contribute, and to stand as equals. Today was about survival. Tomorrow can be about collaboration." A ripple of thought passed through the assembly, the delegates' expressions shifting in ways Rylan struggled to interpret. Izaral's tendrils fluttered softly, signaling contemplation. "Your perspective is intriguing," he said, "and your actions undeniable. But understanding humanity's true nature requires more than words or singular acts of bravery. We must see how you engage not just with threats, but with unity." Rylan inclined his head slightly. "Fair enough, but unity isn't built on observation alone. It's built on trust, on risking something for the chance to gain something greater. Today, I took that risk for you. Maybe tomorrow, you'll take it for us." The elder regarded him for a moment, his glowing eyes narrowing slightly in thought. Finally, he gestured toward the assembly. "Delegates, we must decide. Does humanity earn its place among us, or do we turn away from what we do not yet understand?" The chamber erupted in discussion, voices overlapping in a cacophony of alien tones. Rylan remained still, his hands at his sides, his gaze steady. He could feel the weight of their deliberations pressing down on him, but he did not falter. He'd faced worse odds before, and he knew that this decision, whatever it might be, was beyond his control now. What mattered was that he'd done his part. Minutes stretched into an eternity before Izairal raised a tendril, silencing the room. "The council will vote. Let it be known that this decision is not made lightly. Humanity's inclusion would mark a shift in the galactic paradigm, one that could bring great prosperity or great peril." Rylan watched as each delegate stepped forward, placing a hand or equivalent appendage on a central pillar that glowed faintly with their decision. He couldn't decipher their votes, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. All he could do was wait, his thoughts drifting to Earth, to the people he represented, to the struggles they'd endured, to the hope that had carried them this far. Finally, the pillar dimmed, its glow settling into a steady, neutral light. Izairal turned to face Rylan, his tendrils still. "The Council has reached a decision," he announced. "Humanity will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council. Your actions today have earned you the opportunity to prove your worth. Use it wisely." Relief washed over Rylan, though he kept his expression composed. He nodded. "We won't let you down." As the assembly began to disperse, delegates murmuring among themselves, Israel approached Rylan. "You've shown us much today, Commander," he said. "But this is only the beginning. The galaxy will not easily accept a Deathworlder among its ranks. You must be prepared for what lies ahead." Rylan's gaze hardened, his determination unmistakable. "I've been prepared my whole life. Earth's not an easy place to grow up, but it teaches you how to keep moving forward. I'll face whatever comes." Israel's glow brightened faintly, a gesture Rylan interpreted as approval. "Then perhaps there is hope for your people yet. Go, Commander. Rest. Tomorrow, we begin the true work." Rylan offered a final nod and turned to leave, his steps heavy but purposeful. As he exited the chamber and stepped into the alien city's vibrant glow, he couldn't help but feel the enormity of what lay ahead. Humanity had taken its first step into the stars, but the journey was far from over, and for Rylan, there was no turning back.